All right, no mai haere mai, tēnā koutou katoa. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first community board meeting since the swearing in of elected members at our inaugural meeting on the 31st of October. Welcome to you all today. Welcome to our community board members, the staff attending this meeting. We also have Deputy Mayor Jo Davies-Colley with us, which is lovely. Lovely to have you here. Members of the community in the public gallery, and welcome to those watching on the live stream. We really appreciate you giving up your time this evening and being with us. Before we get into our agenda, I'd also like to quickly thank and acknowledge Waipa District Council staff for the thorough welcome and induction they have provided us over the last 5 weeks. I think that they've done an amazing job to help set us up for a successful traineum. And I think all of us in this room are feeling really positive about the next 3 years ahead. So thank you very much. It's very appreciated, and we're very positive and feeling very appreciative of what you've been doing. And with that being said, I think we'll get into the main part of our agenda. So the first item on our agenda is apologies, and we've received apologies from Mike Montgomery. Do we need to do a disclosure of members' interests? Oh, sorry, before we do that, can I have a mover and a seconder to accept the apologies of Councillor Montgomery? Also moved by Gerda and seconded by Andrew. Thank you. And would anyone like to disclose interests on matters on our agenda today? No disclosures? Okay, we'll move to the public forum, and we are delighted to have a couple of members of the public here today.
Sorry, we're just doing a move it, no seconder.
Yeah, moved by.
In favour.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, we'll just go back to apologies. So we had it moved by Gerda, second by Andrew. Can I say, yeah, all in favour say aye. Against, carried. Okay. Right, we'll move to the public forum now. And our first guest this evening is Roger Dean. So come up to the table, Roger. Now, in front of you is a speaker with a little microphone. You just need to press the button that says talk. Yes, that's perfect. Okay. And that will enable people on the live stream to hear you.
Well, I could just do pass a couple on and saying this side. I've got more than that actually. I've got a small way. Just take 2 and pass them on. Thank you. Okay. Among other things, I'm a model maker, and if you see this paper, you may have seen that in the early October, and I'm looking for a home for the model that I've made. It's been in the Moxon Centre, but after a while they decided they'd had to do up their cafeteria where it was in, and they wanted it moved. So I've at the moment got it at home in my basement, but I really want a place that I can have it so the public can see it. It's not much point just sitting in my basement all the time. It's a reasonable size. I've made a case for it, so it sits in a glass case, and it's 1.2 long, 1 meter wide, and 2.1 high. And I've thought of all sorts of places it could go, but most people reject it because they haven't got the museum hasn't got enough room, the church hasn't got enough room. But there's a place out here would actually be really ideal. It could sit in the corner. It wouldn't get in the way of the Maori carving that's there. The flag might be moved across a couple of inches, but otherwise, and there's a plug because you've got to have a power source for it, because when it's up and I've got it set there, I've got floodlights or spotlights in the model case, which you can switch on from the outside, and it will light up the interior of the model. But yeah, I'm desperately looking for somewhere it can go. I built it many years ago now, and I've had trouble right the way along. I came to a community board meeting a long time ago, and it went into the Moxon Centre. But I must say the Moxon Centre wasn't very suitable in many ways. The public don't go in there much. They can go into the cafeteria, but not too many people do. So that's what I've come to talk about. I've given you the case size, a need for power, and where I had seen a spot that it would be ideal to go. And that's really all I've come to say.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. The photos show it's amazing. I'm sure we'd love to come and have a look at it actually. Would any of the members like to ask any questions?
Roger, how big is the model?
The case that it sits in is 1.2 meters long, 1 meter wide, and 2.1 meters high.
Any other questions? Okay, well, that's great. We'll have a little discussion about that and try and brainstorm some ideas for
All
you.
right, that would be great.
Yeah, and be in touch. We really appreciate you coming along and sharing that with us
All right.
tonight. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Jared, would you like to speak? Okay, we have Jared Milbank joining us, resident of Cambridge, and I understand you'd like to have a chat about Cambridge Connections. We'll let you take it away.
Tēnā koutou katoa. It's great to see you all in a mix of places I've seen before and ones that I haven't. I'd meant to actually pop in towards the end of the last session and say thank you to the previous community board for all of the work that they had done with Cambridge Connections. It was really appreciated. But things sort of went by quicker and I hadn't realized that the last meeting had actually gone past. So thank you. And thank you to the new board for the things that you will be doing with Cambridge Connections. We appreciate that in advance. I really actually wasn't going to speak this evening, but I was really surprised to see Katie Mays in the lobby, or sort of surprised because she's not listed on the agenda, although it was mentioned in the SPNP meeting that she was presenting at the community board. So it would be kind of nice because I suspect there'll be some people that are interested and will have glanced at the agenda and perhaps missed that she was going to be. So I've been watching with interest as Katie May's work has proceeded and the problem statements have emerged from all of the public feedback. It's, I think, been quite positive, and to sort of see that aspect of the reset, I'd like to it'd be interesting to understand some more of the technical aspects of the reset, what's actually happening with the council staff and how much they've been told to change what they're doing. The public part has certainly changed, but we don't know what's happened. And in that regard, the draft strategic case is in the SPNP meeting minutes. It's well worth reading. So this is the business case that would be going forward to NZTA to get some of the funding. It's quite different to the first draft that came out, which was not generally available. But the current draft actually is the second version, and it is based on the one from last time. So they've taken, as has been put in the press, the technical work is carried through from the previous round, so that is not a complete reset. There's some valuable work in there, I understand, and so that's been carried forward. It's useful to have a look through there. There's some really key parts. It has all the information, sort of evidence and placeholders for evidence to back up the problem statements, which is going to be quite key going forward, and information on how Cambridge Connections interacts with larger policy parts around all of the Waikato in New Zealand, for example. One placeholder is for evidence of traffic journeys, which there was a lot of discussion of last time. And the placeholder says that the original Bluetooth data will not be used in this one, which I think some people will be quite interested in reading. There's some other little minor bits, like cycle traffic now accounts for 7% of the morning peak traffic across the Victoria Bridge, which I didn't know. And that there's now more traffic over the low bridge than the high bridge since about 2018. So there's quite a few things that are new and updated since the last draft. I think it'll be interesting. As I said, I'm mostly here for watching and waiting. I did want to introduce myself, and I'm really looking forward to the work that the community board will be doing with Cambridge Connections going ahead. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. And very good feedback as well about the workshop. And potentially adding those as an agenda item for transparency. We will note that down. Okay.
Just got it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think there's probably other ways that we can just make that a bit clearer when we sort of give the community an update and let them know that the meeting is happening. So either way, we'll try and just take that feedback on board. Would anyone like to ask any questions while Jared's on the hot seat? Pip.
I'd just sort of like to make a sort of a broad statement. You know, we had the meeting yesterday where we sort of approved the problem statement, and at the time I sort of, you know, at the meeting I sort of compared what I call sort of stage one, which was sort of not particularly well handled, and sort of stage two. And you know, the reason I sort of made those comments was that there was, you know, we wanted to make sure there was a clear differentiation between stage one and stage two now. And I think there's a you know, genuine commitment from this appointed, you know, council group to the CEO, to Katie, I know is here, who sort of has sort of been everywhere talking to as many people as possible. And then we even sort of got to the stage of saying, how can we make sure that it gets into the risk management profile to make sure that from a risk perspective, we don't drift back to the sort of the, you know, that period. So, you know, one of the reasons I made the sort of the statements and comments at the meeting yesterday was saying we don't ever want to drift back to what phase one was. And I think right across the board, from as council, executive, staff, and a commitment from every, you know, when we went away for our sort of 2-day to get together, you know, one of the things that we said, we need to get trust and respect back, you know, trust from the community. And this project is really the benchmark for getting trust back. So, you know, at all levels of the organization, there is a real commitment to this being very different. So I'm delighted, and you know, I think you have the support of the whole organization to make this as transparent as possible.
Thanks, Pip. Would anyone else like to briefly ask a question? Yeah.
Jared, just your continuity is welcomed as we go into new training. It's good to have a familiar face, and not only familiar, but proactive and positive, you know, contribution to the project. So just ask you to keep being involved. You're a great ambassador for the people of Cambridge. Thank you.
Thank you. I missed one part of the change between the reports. The traffic data has been updated, and there's now up to 30, an average weekday average of 36,000 vehicles across the bridges, which I think is about a 10% increase over the last draft. So, so definitely moving forward is a key thing.
just very quickly.
And I think sort of also at the meeting, the sort of before we started, that there was the letter from Charlotte to the council, just sort of looking at yes, ultimately, dare I say, the bridge decision is going to be key, but very much respecting the fact that in the short term, there's a whole pile of other things that need to be done because the bridge is a long-term solution, and there needs to be a lot of mitigating sort of short-term solutions to make sure we don't run into the congestion problems. Just as a complete aside, friends join me for field days in June, and they were renting a house in Taylor Street, and we're in Alpha Street, and it took them 40 minutes to get from Taylor Street, where the school is, to my house in Alpha Street. So if that wasn't a recognition of major congestion, that taught me an awful lot.
Thanks for that. Now, just to emphasise, you are welcome to stay and through to the workshop, and likewise online, it will be live streamed. So yeah, thank you so much once again. I really appreciate you coming and having a chat to us. All right, and with that, I think we will. Are there anyone else would like to speak? We're good to go. Okay. Oh, actually, that's
Okay, I asked a question a couple of months ago about the speed bumps in Bryce Street after witnessing the fire truck trying to get up Main Street during heavy traffic, siren going, people scattering, and I asked the question about the speed bumps and I was told that there was a meeting between the emergency services and council regarding what was proposed in that street. And it was agreed that everything was all okay.
sorry, Chris, can you just read out the statement? Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Feedback, this is an email I got from Dennis Hunt. Dear Chris, read the feedback on Cambridge CBD roading changes. You have requested feedback from the Cambridge Fire Brigade on the changes made to the roading on local streets in recent years and how that impacts on our brigade in attending calls. Our comments refer in particular to Wilson Street, Bryce Street, and the main shopping area of Victoria Street. We comment as follows. A couple of years ago, our brigade was approached a number of times to meet with council to discuss possible roading changes. As the Chief Fire Officer of the brigade, I attended a meeting alongside other emergency services. However, we also had representatives visit our station to talk with members. We were asked for our views on the possible changes that had been recommended, only for our comments to be ignored. In particular, we explained that Bryce Street was our main thoroughfare to attend any calls in Cambridge West. While we appreciated that new cycleways were likely to be implemented on Wilson and Bryce Streets, we stressed the importance of having little change to Bryce Street. In the past, we would deliberately try to avoid travelling through the CBD, and it was important for us to continue to use Bryce Street. However, with the current configuration of Bryce Street, it is now less of an option for us. We have issues with A, the level of raised speed bumps, B, the pedestrian crossings around the roundabouts, and C, the contour and narrowness of the road outside the Moxham Centre. The work undertaken here impacts on our response times to calls in nearby areas. It was around this time that both Grey and Hall Street were closed off with no thoroughfare to Cambridge Road, leaving Bryce Street as the only road accessible to us without having to travel through the main street. That has also contributed to other bottlenecks and congestion in our streets. The changes made have not only resulted in our fire trucks changing routes to calls, The general public also appeared to avoid some of these roads. It was common for many cars to shortcut down Wilson Street, turn left onto Duke Street, and head on to Bryce Street. However, many of these road users now also prefer to use Victoria Street, making it even more difficult for us to travel through our congested town. In particular, the speed humps are hard on our trucks, and given the number of these in close proximity to our station, are a big factor in our choice of travel routes when attending calls. There is a large speed hump by the town hall that we must also endure, and along with all other traffic slowing down for this, automatically means that we also need to virtually stop at this bump. The speed humps along Cambridge Road on the way to the velodrome are excessively high, and the small skimming made to these some months ago has had little impact. Attending calls at St. Peter's, for example, has resulted in delays to our response times. We would welcome a reevaluation of all speed humps at our town. Finally, in defence of our brigade, we have been asked a number of times if we have considered relocating the fire station out to Hautapu area. However, our station is best placed where it is, and in brackets, unless a site in Carter's Flat were to become a possibility in the longer term. Our members live all over Cambridge, and we cannot have residents in Leamington trying to turn out to a station based at Hautapu. Our station must be accessible to everyone, and we have already noticed a delay in response times as we maneuver through congested streets to get to the station. I'm happy to discuss any of these matters with you in the future.
Okay, thanks for that.
That's from Dennis Hunt.
So given Dennis isn't here, we're probably not able to ask questions. But I think in the immediate priority would be to get a response to Dennis from the transportation manager, and then look at the issue from there. Right, so let's move on to agenda item 2, confirmation of the previous minutes. These were for the inaugural Cambridge Community Board meeting on the 31st of October 2025. And we have noted that there's this one amendment needed, and that's a correction of Chris Monet's name. Could I have a mover for the minutes? Be accepted? Vera and seconder? Chris, that's great. All in favour, say aye. Against? Carried. Okay, the next agenda item was the North Waipa South Hamilton Spatial Plan Study Update. And we have Vanessa Honore online. Welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you.
We will let you take this away. You have a report and some background information to provide to us, which we're very keen to hear about in relation to this next engagement phase on the spatial land use scenarios. So take it away when you're ready, Vanessa. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening to all of you. I'm probably going to introduce myself first to the ones that don't know me yet. But first, welcome to all the new community board members. My name is Vanessa Honore. I am part of a strategy team. I'm the principal strategic planner there. I am also seconded to Future-Proof as the urban and regional planning lead for the North Waipa and South Hamilton spatial study. And so tonight we're looking at the second update for this project. I will also apologize for the limited time that I have tonight. I'm actually on leave, but I just thought it would be actually quite good for me to try to introduce that item before I go away. Yes, this is the second update that we're providing to this committee board. The first one having been done, as Charles mentioned, in the last meeting back in August. At the time, we were looking at doing a stock take of information on the area about what we knew and what we didn't know, and where the investigation actually needed to be carried forward. This has led, obviously, to the development of scenarios, which I am actually presenting tonight to you, and more on focus to the engagement phase that is carried on the assessment of those scenarios there. Maybe a few items on, or a few points to consider when we talk about scenarios, and this is something that you will have seen already in the report. Territorial planning is quite, it's a tool that's been used through either businesses or planners. It is mostly an exploratory mechanism to start to kind of understand what intervention or what type of impact or the trade-off that could occur in different future scenarios. They're not item of predictions. For the ones who have read actually the scenarios, so there is 5 of them, coming from a statu quo, which is really kind of describing the current situation of the area, of the study area, which is pretty much around the airport, around North Peacock, South Ohopo, on the west side for Collins Road, and on the east side towards Mystery Creek. So that's the extent of the study area. And the scenarios explored, as I was just mentioning, are scenario 1, status quo current status, scenario 2, which looks at phased out development across the area with some retention of the green space, highly productive soil as well. A scenario 3, which very much aligned with the Going for Growth program, which is currently probably under proposal by central government, which is an accelerated land zoning uptake. A scenario 4, where we explore the possibility to establish a development corporation around the airport, which will actually undertake the industrial development around the area. And scenario 5, which is very much environmental focus, which looks at the minimized impact on environmental limits, with Te Ture Whaimana being actually giving effect to the full extent of the strategy of the Waikato River as well. So you would have seen that the scenario are trying to very much test the extremes of development in this area, and this is really what this phase is looking into. And I think I would just leave it there, just to make sure that the introduction of the scenarios were done adequately, and I will take the report as read and answer any questions that you may have for the next 10 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you, Vanessa. So we'll open it up to the floor. Would any members like to ask Vanessa a question? Go, Andrew.
Hi, Vanessa. Andrew Myers, the rural representative from the Maungatautari ward. Thank you for presenting your report tonight. I have read it, and you presented to the community board, it must have been about 6 months ago in August. And at that August meeting, I asked for some further clarification of the sort of the financial impacts of the loss of rural industry and rural land because of the growth of the urban and the rezoning of land. In this second draft report, I don't see any further exploration into that. Can you comment on that at all?
I would actually review the meeting of on the 25th of August, but I don't remember being an action noted against that. I think we had discussed the impact of this possible urbanization across the area, but we wouldn't be able to actually do a modeling as such. You will need to also create some assumption with the value of the land. My short answer is no, we haven't done any modeling. That's not what we were intending through the scenario as well. It's very qualitative assessment rather than a quantitative one. Yeah.
I have to apologise. As the rural representative, I do have a slightly different viewpoint, perhaps, to the other elected members. So I just stand in that. I'm talking from that viewpoint. And, you know, farming is the biggest industry in Waipa at 14%. In the last 20 years, farming areas decreased by 15%. In my 3 years on the community board, I've seen many proposals for the increase of population and residential zoned land. I haven't seen any proposals that support the increase of the primary industrial area. So my comments come from those points of view, and I believe this study, while it addresses large infrastructure and Southern Links connections and the growth of the airport, which I think are fantastic, it also is a vehicle for, you know, I overlaid the Rukahia, I think it was in your number 3 proposal, the red and yellow intensity area. That overlaid over Leamington was the same size as Leamington as a rezone to residential or, you know, higher density use land. And I think that is significant and should be further, you know, put in the reporting about, you know, its effects on the primary industry of Waipa.
If I can just add, Andrew, your comments at the last meeting were actually very valuable. And following the really good point that you had made about the lack of impact on those productive soil and on the farming activities, you would have seen through the scenarios on multiple occasions that I've actually made a description for each scenarios on the impact of the possible urbanization within the source exploratory scenarios onto the farming activity. So really to kind of ensure that any readers looking through the scenarios understand the trade-offs of developing on those high productive land against the farming activities that could actually occur. So I just want to kind of say that was a direct consequence of your comment on the last time. You will see that the farming activities is actually represented almost 20 times in the document. You can make even a word search. When it comes to the maps, I want to be absolutely clear that they should not be used for any kind of scale or representation in scale of development. And that's why I made sure that on each map, there is a disclaimer explaining that those maps are for illustration only as well. Yeah, so it's quite important that we do not use those maps as being an indication of where future development should locate. They are only an illustration of the scenarios.
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa. I appreciate that you've included some of my feedback. So that's wonderful. Just to quote your report in scenario 5, it's the environmental option about, you know, it allows medium density housing and significant rezoning of land. But in terms of farming, quote, it says farming continues, but only under strict controls preventing intensification. I just can't swallow that you're preventing farming intensification while you're building thousands of homes or allowing thousands of homes to be built in the area, which is greater intensification and worse for the environment. So that's just a quoted point from your document. Look, I understand where you're coming from, and I just hope that my comments can add further to your further drafts to pitch for the rural sector. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Did you want to add anything else to that discussion, Vanessa?
No, thank you. I appreciate. Oh, sorry, there's an echo. Can you hear me?
Yes, yep, we can hear
you. No, I appreciate the comments that Andrew has on for the farming activity, and I think we are ensuring to have a fair and comprehensive discussions around the possible loss or retention of those farming activities within the area. But yeah.
Any other questions of Vanessa? So I understand that you're going to be coming back to the community board in the new year at our February meeting potentially. So that will continue the discussion then. We'd love to see you again. So with that being said, we will put forward a resolution that the Cambridge Community Board receives the report of Vanessa Honaday, Principal Strategic Planner, titled North Waipa South Hamilton Spatial Study Update with SEM number 11581066. Could I have a mover, please? Pip, thank you. And a seconder? Great, Stuart, thank you. All in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Wonderful, thank you. Thanks, Vanessa. All the best.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye.
You too, thank you. And now I'd like to invite Carl Pavlovich to come and speak to us. on agenda item number 6, he is representative for the, in relation to representative for the Cambridge Wastewater Treatment Plant Community Liaison Group. So yeah, I'll let you take it away. Thank you for being here.
Evening Community Board. So I'll take the report as read. It's relatively simple. We need you guys to nominate a representative for the Cambridge Liaison Group. Details of exactly what they get up to are in the report, but in short, it's a very short-term engagement, approximately 2 meetings before the new consent for the Cambridge wastewater discharge is initiated and that group is disestablished. But your voice is equally important and we need to have you guys at the table. So I'll leave it at that, and I'm willing to hear who you would like to nominate.
Perfect. So Mike Montgomery has served as a board's representative to this group, which will continue to operate through to commissioning of the project at the end of 2026. So it's only 1 more year, 2 meetings essentially over that time. I have had a discussion with Mike Montgomery and he's happy to retain the role, but if there's someone else who would like to be the representative, then happy to take other nominations. Okay, so it sounds like we are going to nominate Mike Montgomery to be representative. Okay, so I'll move to the resolution. Resolution A, receive the report of Carl Pavlovich, Manager Water Services, titled Representative for Cambridge Wastewater Treatment Plant Community Liaison Group, document number 115838887. And B, we nominate Mike Montgomery as the Cambridge Community Board representative on the Cambridge Wastewater Treatment Plant Community Liaison Group. Could I have a mover? I'm happy to move. And second, Stuart. That's great. All in favour, say aye. Against, carried. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening, Carl. All right, and now we're going to welcome Joe Greed to the table, who's going to talk to us about the 2026 Anzac Day Interim Authority Delegation. Take it away, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is just a report to deal with a delegation in the interim. Because of the election, the Anzac Working Group disestablished at the end of the triennium. You're looking to appoint your working groups at in the first quarter of next year, but there is some planning that needs to be undertaken in the meantime in terms of the event application and the road closure submissions for Anzac Day. So it's proposed to delegate authority to the chair of the Cambridge Community Board to be able to deal with those issues in the meantime until the working group is established. So we have a mechanism to keep that moving and enable us to meet those timeframes for the road closures. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Joe. So we have 2 recommendations, A and B, that the Cambridge Community Board receives the report of Joe Greed, Manager Governance, titled 2026 Anzac Day Interim Authority Delegation, ECM number 115842216, and B, delegates authority to the chair of the Cambridge Community Board to make any decisions necessary for the purpose of finalising and submitting road closure and event applications for any events associated with Anzac Day 2026 in consultation with the previous Anzac Day Working Group members. Could I please have a mover? Gerda and seconder, Pip, thank you. All in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Joe. And you're going to stay there while you chat to us about schedule of meetings for 2026.
Thank you. So this report is just to set your schedule of meetings for 2026, your community board meetings. So those are on Tuesdays in the months February through to December, with the exception of July. And we also include a provision in there just in case we have to make any changes to the dates for some reason, to delegate authority to either the CE or acting CE to be able to change those dates if they need to in consultation with the chair. Because sometimes things might eventuate with board members' availability or things, and so we may have to change things. So we just want to. That is,
Sorry, Stuart, can you use the microphone?
Roughly how many meetings a year is there?
so that's 10, so just no meetings in January and then in July, which has been the period that we have over the last probably 4 or 5 years tried to kind of keep free of meetings for both council and community board. It hasn't always worked out with different things, but the intention is to also this year, the coming year, keep July meeting free.
Any other questions for Joe on this item? Okay, so with that, there are 3 recommendations here: that the Cambridge Community Board receives the report schedule of meetings 2026 of Joe Greed, Governance Manager, and B, adopts the following schedule of meetings for 2026, commencing at 6 p.m, 17 February, 17 March, 21 April, 19 May, 16 June, 18 August, 15 September, 20 October, 17 November, and 8 December. And C, delegates pursuant to clause 32 of Schedule 7 to the Local Government Act 2002, separately to both the Chief Executive and Acting Deputy Chief Executive, the authority to alter, including adding to, removing, or rescheduling the schedule of ordinary meetings as specified in the schedule of meetings adopted under recommendation B in consultation with the Chair of the Cambridge Community Board. I'm happy to move that. Could I have a seconder, please? Great, Chris. Thank you very much. All in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. And Joe, you're up again. This one is the election of the deputy chairperson. So we'll leave you with that.
Thank you. So just to outline the process, it's the same process as you went through to elect your chairperson at the inaugural. So there's the 2 systems that we had for the chairperson as well. So there is I'll start with system B, which is the simplest one, which there is a round of voting if there's more than one nomination, and if there is a tie in then that instance, it's drawn by lot. And then the other system that you can adopt is system A, where effectively you call for nominations, and if there's a tie, then actually the lowest scoring person drops off, and then you go through rounds of votings by that. So it's more, you end up having more rounds of voting with system A. So system B is the simplest method, which is the one that's recommended. And so if before you do nominations, if you can select your system, so there's a recommendation in your report that the Cambridge Community Board select system B from clause 25, schedule 7 of the Local Government Act 2002 to elect its deputy chairperson.
So discussion on that. Are we happy to go with system B? Okay, great. So I'll do that recommendation first. That the Cambridge Community Board select system B from clause 25, schedule 7 of the Local Government Act 2002 to elect its deputy chairperson. All in favour say aye. Against? Oh, sorry, a mover. Good, a seconder, Pip. All in favour say aye. Against, carried. Okay, great. And then for the second piece, I'm more than happy to nominate Andrew Myers to be deputy chairperson. Okay, it sounds pretty unanimous. Are you happy with that, Andrew? Okay. So I just need someone to move, please. Good. Okay, sorry, that Andrew Myers be appointed as deputy chairperson of the Cambridge Community Board. Can I have a mover? Gerda, seconder? Chris, all in favour say aye. Against, carried. Very good. Well done, Andrew. Yeah.
Thank you for your support. Just at the inaugural meeting, I did make a comment about the election of chairperson, and I just remember it said it was going to be minuted, and that was for a system that I proposed was that if the board agrees in unanimity, they don't have to vote. You know, I just feel it's quite awkward that there's a public vote if everyone agrees about what's going to happen. And that, I said it was going to be minuted. I just know it wasn't minuted.
Yes, in terms of the Local Government Act, it actually says that the only way that the community board can make a decision is by voting. So effectively, if you don't vote, you couldn't actually elect a chairperson. So that would be kind of a fundamental change to the Local Government Act in terms of how you're able to make decisions. Yeah.
And thanks, Andrew. I'm very pleased to have you as a wingman. Thank you. So the item agenda number 10 is the Treasury report for the period ended 31 October 2025, which Joe Greed is going to present again, detailing the funds available to the Cambridge Community Board for the allocation of discretionary grants.
Thank you. So this is for the period ended 31st of October this year. And so you'll see two sets of figures. You've got your discretionary grants ones in there first, and then also your sister cities balance in there. So that has anyone got any questions? I think it might be quite good. You will be having a discretionary round coming up. Where you'll be looking at distribution of grants. You can see on that first page, summary of uncommitted at where have you got your summary of uncommitted is $26,090.95. And it's sitting quite high there because you've still yet to have your discretionary grant round. One of the things that kind of happens in an election year, and because you only really have one round of funding, holding the discretionary grant funding to this time when the new board comes on board, that means they can make any decisions about what activities you might want to undertake, and then it's also for the new board to distribute those funds in the this financial year.
So, Joe, just for clarification, how is that discretionary fund like promoted or publicised to enable people to apply? Because obviously in our community there's a lot of worthy causes and projects and initiatives, so it'd be quite good just to clarify how that works.
That's where we work with our comms team, Debs, to engage with our community on that. So what we will be doing is talking to you in February about any grant criteria and how you want to apply those. So we'll be coming to you with your February meeting to finalise your criteria, and then looking to go out for March, isn't it, Debs? Go out for March and then looking at distribution in April, isn't it? So
thank you. Andrew and then Chris.
Is that $26,000 confirmed, or is the council going to look at that in cost saving measures, removing it?
No, that's the money that's in the community board discretionary grant for this financial year.
Andrew's just answered my question.
Any other questions?
Sort of broadly, I mean, it's great to have, any funds at all, but sort of, that's a relatively small amount when you look at the number of potential people or organizations that want us to take it up. I mean, broadly, what is the range of payment that would generally be made, because that you then end up with sort of, how many ways can you split $26,000?
What happened, because there used to be a larger sum of funding that was available, and it dropped down. So when we did the last lot of discretionary fund, that's when we asked the boards and the Primary Ward Committee to have a think about their criteria. And I think it was I think Cambridge did as well, adopted a limit of $2,000 in terms of application ranges, because what you did see before there was that cap introduced, you might get people applying for $1,000, but then equally you might get applications come in at $10,000 or $15,000. And so then it was in part of developing your criteria, it will be about what kind of funding groups that you want to attract. And really thinking about that in February to make sure you're kind of targeting the people that you want to be capturing.
Yeah, I think that discussion will be really helpful as well for us to just get an understanding too of the other funding pools available through the council. So yeah, really looking forward to chatting more about that. Were there any other questions on this item? Okay, so the recommendation is that the Cambridge Community Board receive the report of Nada Milne, Financial Accountant, titled Treasury Report for the period ending 31 October 2025. Could I have a mover, please? Pitt and seconder. Oh, Stuart, thank you. Everyone, all in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thanks, Joe. Okay, so our next agenda item is board members' report from meetings attended on behalf of the Cambridge Community Board. That being key, on behalf of the Community Board, because we are all involved in different parts of meetings and things in our business and personal lives. So yeah, this is a discussion item. You can share the meetings you've attended and any anecdotes from that. Just keep it quite brief. So sorry to pick on you, Andrew, but would you like to start just so you can set the tone and structure for the rest of us who are new? Thank you.
Probably the most important is the CRG, the reference group for the Cambridge Connections, which I understand Katie is going to talk to us further about this evening. So I have been elected by the Community Board to represent us on that community reference group as one of 15 participants. I won't comment too much about the structure because Katie will cover all that in detail about the dates and what's happening. My comments are about probably how it's going and what I think. So I would say the quality of the participants has been well selected and a great group of people from the community, well-rounded. Depth of thought is unbelievable. A lot of sort of offline emails going back and forth. We talk to these members maybe around the town at other events, and they're always thinking about it and discussing ideas with me or other people, which is really good. So I think everyone should take a lot of faith in that. There's been some concerns put forward about the problem statements presented by council were slightly different than the problem statements agreed on what the community reference group came to, and the community reference group members were surprised a bit by that. So I have given that feedback to Katie and to the governance steering group, Mike Montgomery and Joe Davies Colley. So that's kind of, I see as a key part of my role is to make sure that people are being heard and any concerns are being fed back, and they've responded back to me directly. So I think there also should be faith in that it is being listened to. Jared's commented before about what's happening, how the council staff are dealing with the mechanics of the project. I think there's a very, very valid question, and we need to follow that up more. And that is one area that I am following up. Katie will talk further about the next stage of the project, so I think we should wait for that for further point on that. And the Cambridge Community Board as a whole, not just me, but the Community Board as a whole is a key stakeholder in the project. So we have shared the website links, and everyone's had input on that. So I think we're only going to be more involved in the future from all the members. Other groups, Safer Cambridge Trust meets every month. I didn't attend the last meeting because I was busy, but they did have it was an AGM, and they did a presentation about accepting a marketing campaign to promote the trust better. I wasn't there, so I can't comment too much on it, but that's what was undertaken. The Bohoro relationship with our sister city in Japan, Alana Mackay was the representative who looked after that. She has just informed me that there is an event, a Japanese style event this Friday evening at I think it's at St. Andrew's Church. It's a book review. There's going to be a congregation of people interested in Japan that if anyone that's interested in Bohoro might like to attend that event. The Lekwina signs, I think, Charlotte, you can talk more about Lekwina maybe. The signs were out by St. Andrew's Church. We took them down this afternoon. There was one that got stolen in the last month or so, and I mean, the police are onto that. I did attend also the Cambridge Commercial Property Owners Group, purely because Mike Pettit was presenting, and he was presenting. It was a good chance for me to understand his viewpoints and hear him talk about what his goals are. So I went there and attended that to get a better understanding and and to bring that feedback maybe into how we drive our strategy as the CCB. The Kirapiro Domain Master Plan, I've been a representative for the community board on that group. That is out for public consultation. There are some public events, workshops going on at the moment that you would have been emailed about. One is, I know, coming up Saturday, the 13th at Lake Kirapiro. The public are invited. I'm going to go to that event. Anyone else might want to go. It'll be at the lake, and they'll have things on the wall and council staff to talk all about it and get the public's feedback. We're going to talk about election of the Safer Cambridge Trust. You can do that. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Do you want to go next, Stuart? Would you like to report on any meetings you've attended on behalf of the Cambridge Community Board? We're just doing a round table.
I'm still learning everything. I haven't really, yeah, just taking everything in at this stage. Haven't got a lot to offer.
That's right. Would you like to go next, Chris?
A little bit like Stuart, I haven't really attended any meetings on behalf of the board, but have been involved in erecting up the Laquesne signs, helping with a bit of muscle there. Last few days ago, helped with setting up the Christmas tree lights. I've just been basically being used for muscle at this stage, and but doing a lot of liaising with some of the older people. I just recently joined the Rebus Men's Club. There's over 100 members there, and yeah, there's still a long way to go.
Thanks, Chris. Pip, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I was sort of in my councillor role, I've sort of had a couple of approaches where sort of I'm going, sort of do this in council, sort of the community board, of which I've sort of handled it in a council capacity at the moment. But one is with Cambridge Oaks, but secondly today, which is I had an interesting discussion with Brad from Parks and Reserves. In an interesting scenario developing where the Vogel Street soccer grounds, apparently there's a lease that the football club have, and there's becoming a bit of a dispute between sort of how much the ground is being used by the soccer people, and they potentially don't want the cricket people there anymore. So it's just one of those sort of potential festering issues. I think Brad has it pretty well under control, and hopefully they can come to a common some common ground as to how they can sort of manage it together. But it's what interesting Brad told me today was that the football club actually have a lease and they can do whatever they want on that lease, but that is coming up for sort of a renewal. So it's a sort of, it's one of those sort of interesting scenarios that sort of when you think about sort of, you know, these public grounds, there's a bit of a squabble between different sporting groups who want to use them. So, you know, it's sort of something that probably, and Joe, even, you know, as we sort of as these sort of sporting grounds start becoming sort of more and more valuable as we start growing and we run out of green spaces for farming and for sort of, you know, for community services. Yeah, I think we've got to be very mindful that we can't just have sort of particularly one dominant sporting group wanting to control, you know, that land, because it's going to become incredibly valuable.
Gerda, would you like to go next?
We had, Charlotte and I had a meeting with Heber Wellington regarding Lakinwa, just to get a better understanding where they're at and what they want to do. What came out of that is that awareness of what it is and what it involves should be spread, because especially the younger kids, because that history is not known. So we're working on that. And then another thing, I helped with the Christmas tree lights. That was major good fun. We had a good time there. Those boys were amazing. And very early on, so this is a compliment to the enforcement team, I just had a random call that there were older people were harassed by the neighbors and it was a big story. So Mike from the enforcement team were onto it within a day and sorted out. So if you can just transfer. So that's me.
Can I also just add that I ran to sort of a retailer who's sort of saying, are these signs really allowed to be out there? And I contacted the head of regulatory affairs, who sort of literally within 24 hours had one of their regulators on, and next day I walked downtown and the signs weren't in the middle of the street. So I mean, it really is a sort of a great, when I talk about responsiveness, where the council actually responds to the needs, that was an example where within 24 or 48 hours, one retailer who's worried about another retailer sort of tripping over people in town actually responded so incredibly quickly. So it's nice to see that the council is responding to those needs.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry. I also talked to some retailers regarding a Christmas parade. So in the paper, it was, and I didn't see the article, conveyed that they don't want a Christmas parade because there's a day lost in revenue. That is not the true message. They just asked to have it later in the day so that they don't lose a full day of, obviously not this year, but at some future point, a full day of trading. So rather have it at twilight or from 4 o'clock onwards to make it more viable for them.
And it's interesting that sort of actually at a council meeting we had to get an actual approval, and there was one retailer in Cambridge and one retailer in TA who made a formal complaint. But I think you're right. Sort of generally they would prefer it later in the day, which meant they can have a full day of trading. It's sort of something we might consider this coming year. And it's interesting, TA gets more badly affected than Cambridge because they have their Christmas parade on Saturday and it's here on Sundays, and the number of Cambridge retailers are actually closed. So it impacts fewer Cambridge retailers than it does TA retailers. But yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for that, Pip. Just to round up, there have actually been quite a few activities that I've tried to participate in over the last month. So the big one was the Armistice Day commemorations, where it was an absolute pleasure to be involved in that and lay a wreath on behalf of the Cambridge Community Board. So really looking forward to getting more involved in Sustain Anzac committees over the coming year. Another meeting that Chris and I went to last week was the Cambridge Prostate Cancer Support Group. One of the great things about this role now is getting a better understanding of what sort of support networks are out there. And this was a really, really good discussion. They just wanted to get a better understanding of what the purpose of the Cambridge Community Board was. And so we could talk through that and also take on board some feedback about some of the key issues and priorities that are impacting them at an individual level. So well worth it, and definitely encourage other community groups to reach out to us so that we can participate in those sorts of initiatives. Lukanwa, we, as Gerda said, had our initial meetings and we've done some initial planning with a view to bringing this agenda item back at our February meeting. Just in regards to Safer Cambridge, we will need to put together a report for the next meeting to do an appointment to that committee. So we'll note that down. And likewise, in the new year, we'll be looking at Lukanwa and Bihoro and getting a representative from the Cambridge Community Board to help in those areas. So that will be one of our priorities in the new year. I think the February meeting's looking like it will have quite a good size agenda. So yeah, I think we can probably leave it at that now and look to close the formal part of our meeting. You can stay online for the Cambridge Connections workshop and say in person as well. We will take a 5 to 10 minute adjournment before the workshop just so we can have a quick cup of tea and use the wharepaku. Yeah, otherwise I think, yeah, well done team. We got through our first formal meeting. And yeah, I now officially close the meeting. Thank you. Right, we're going to move into workshops now. So I'll just remind the members that no minutes will be taken during a workshop. So if you want to take your own notes, it's a really good idea. No decisions are made during a workshop either. This is really Katie's opportunity just to give us an update on Cambridge Connections, and then we can, we'll take your lead, Katie. We can either wait and ask questions at the end, or if you're happy for us to ask questions as we go. I'll just get everyone to raise their hand so we can take turns, and I can make sure that we're going in the right order, okay? Yeah, and just remember that we are still on live stream. So for those who are watching on live stream, please use your microphone so they can hear.
Thank you. Good evening. I just wanted to double check. Do you have a copy of the slides provided to you for the workshop? Okay. I just wanted to check because it just means to just think about how I pause on the way through. I'm really happy to take questions as we go, and if I do have a subsequent slide that'll give the information, then I'll just ask to hold over. But the purpose of this is absolutely to give you an opportunity to be able to come up to speed with the project. I'm sure that, I mean, you'll all be aware of Cambridge Connections. You can't have lived in Cambridge without it. But rather than assuming at this very first meeting that you've had a chance to kind of look under the hood, then this is really that chance to do so and come up to speed, so that towards the end of this time, what I'd like to do is have run through how we got to the end of stage 1 of the project, which we reached yesterday, and what comes up next, because it's the what comes up next, which involves a lot of community engagement, and how would the community board like to be involved is the thing that I'd really like to have a bit of discussion with you today, and then bring that back and work with you as we go into the next phase of the project. So please do interrupt and ask any questions on the way through. All right, are you happy? Can you click through? That's right. And then I can click from here. Nice. Okay, so we have just finishing what we've called stage 1 of the project, and you'll see a timeline and a few slides on, and that's been about understanding what the problems are that we're trying to fix, setting ourselves up for the project, and you'll see the community engagement that's involved for this time. So what I thought I'd do is just run through a little bit about the background to the project, what work we've been doing in the last little while, and then what comes up next. So make sure we're onto here we go here. So just a reminder, what the purpose of Cambridge Connections is to develop a 30-year transport plan for Cambridge that will require us identifying what we're calling short, medium and long-term initiatives. So it's 0 to 3 years, 3 to 10 and 10 to 30. And the reason for breaking it down that way is that the 0 to 3 year activity will be those that go forward for funding of the long-term plan and put forward into the regional land transport plan for regional co-funding by NZTA. This idea of the short, medium and long is also that for some of those initiatives that we know are going to take a long time, and obviously things like an additional bridge don't happen overnight. You've got a number of stages, means that, that the first step is in the further investigation, get to designation and take you through for the long term. The timing of the whole project to December next year is also a balance between making sure that by the end of next year we've identified what those short-term initiatives are by that time, so they can go into the next long-term plan and regional land transport plan, or we will miss the window of opportunity to do that. So trying to get through the work quickly enough for that, but also to take as much time as possible so that we can have the extent of community engagement that's possible through all of this as well. And so that's the balance we're trying to strike at each of the phases of the work of the project. We are following the NZTA business case approach, and that's how you end up with kind of language like problem statements, which we'll talk about shortly. But it is really critical for us that we follow an NZTA business case approach, which for two reasons. One is that this is a process that's been designed out of the back of the Treasury's Better Business Case model. And so for all large infrastructure projects, one should expect that there is a business case that supports that kind of work. Similarly, if we want to be eligible for 50% co-funding from NZTA, then we need to follow the business case approach. And so that's very much guiding the staging of this project as well. I'm going to keep talking until people put up their hands. So the geographic scope, this is called Cambridge Connections, but I think it's really important to recognise that Cambridge doesn't sit in isolation, and we've got plenty of freight and people who move from one side, of the district through to the other, and particularly because we have an expressway out this way, and you can about to use the wrong hand. And so we have particularly that freight moving through from Taranaki in the western part of the district across the expressway, moving north-south as well. And so we really need to think about what's changing around Cambridge that will impact. So things like the Cambridge to Piarere extension, the idea of Southern Links, how will that change the way that people move in and through Cambridge? And similarly, how will the development of Cambridge impact on those things as well? So very much sits within the broader district and is therefore relevant to all parts of the district. Why now? Cambridge, you're so well aware of just the scale of growth in Cambridge, and we spoke about this a little bit at the induction session a couple of days ago. But certainly within many people's lifetime, Cambridge will double in size, and so it's hardly surprising that actually your transport network just is not going to be able to cope with that scale of growth. And so we need to be able to get on with that now to plan for that sort of short and long term. We're not working in isolation, and this slide here gives just as a bit of a schematic to show that we are working and relying on work that's already been done. Kirsty the other night was speaking about Ahuake, our spatial plan for the district, and our district growth strategy with Melissa. These are the things that have already determined and reflecting what our community has said that are important about Cambridge, and it builds on the work of things like the town centre concept plan that we mentioned the other night as well. So we are building on the work that has gone before and what our community's already told us, and giving life into that long-term plan. This slide here talks about the key stages, and in the shaded box down the bottom is where we were at yesterday with the Strategic Planning and Policy Committee, where the committee did approve problem statements that set us up for the project. What you'll see on this timeline, as I say, is taking us out to December next year. Along the bottom are those key decision points for the Strategic Policy and Planning Committee, which is Strategic Planning and Policy Committee. I'm not getting my P's around the wrong way, sorry, in our acronym. The key decision points, and it's that committee who are the decision makers for this project all the way along. And so we are taking that decision-led approach where we do the work, lock in that decision, do the next phase of work, lock in that decision, and move our way through that. And it does mean, particularly as we go into next year, then the next phase of work, when we call for all ideas, we start with a very long list, and then we start to filter and filter and filter. And those things like making sure at each of those stage gates, then council is the decision maker as we work our way through that. So that's why you're seeing the stages along the bottom, and along the top, what you're seeing is the type of community engagement that you can expect at each of those stages. And so those are very interwoven throughout the life of the project. We are reflecting on there are two things that are really critical to the way that we are approaching this project. And one of them is taking this decision-led approach and being really clear about the role of council as the decision maker, and the role of groups like the Community Board, Community Reference Group, the Ideas Forum, the general public, our experts, what role each of them play. And so those roles and responsibilities become very important. And so that's what you'll see throughout the way that we talk and the way that we're preparing the planning for this work, again, to make sure that we provide everyone with the opportunity to have an input, But leading to the next slide, we're also clear what is the promise that we're making about what role that input has. And so when are we as council informing our community? When are we consulting? When are we actually involving? And so where are we along an engagement spectrum? So we're very clear what's our ask of people and what will we do with the information that we get from people at each of those stages. We have set up a range of groups to support this work, and as Andrew said, one of those groups, if we run through each of them, is the Community Reference Group. It's a group of 15 members from that's representing a really diverse range of interests across the community. And it's great to have Andrew representing the community board there. We called for expressions of interest for that group. We had 53 expressions of interest, and they were, the calibre of everyone was fabulous, and we really were spoiled for choice. And so trying to put a group together that had a good mix and match of all of the interests that we were after was tricky. But I'd echo Andrew's comments that actually the calibre of people's fantastic, and they're all really committed people. And I think we're very, very fortunate. The Community Reference Group is co-chaired by Chris Flatt and Peter Carr. And again, having co-chairs, I think, has been a really good move. They bounce ideas off each other. As chairs, they're able to then speak independently and together in different issues and represent the Community Reference Group. And that's been a really good way of working. And certainly it also means that in terms of having a really strong link between the Community Reference Group and providing suggestions, directions and guidance to me is the interface back into the project so that we can keep thinking about how do we make the best use of the Community Reference Group. Then we've got certainly more eyes and ears about all of that, and that's been really valuable. Community Reference Group has met 3 times face to face so far as in this first phase of the work to support the development of the problem statements, as well as having plenty of email trails and we support them with an online platform where they're able to provide feedback in response to things like the draft problem statement so that they can see that work in progress on the way. So the Community Reference Group will continue to be a really important group to be testing ideas and bringing ideas from all of those people's networks as well. More broadly than the Community Reference Group, what we've then got is an ideas forum. And an ideas forum is for those people who perhaps have an ongoing interest in the project and want to be able to see more about what we're doing. There are currently 76 members of the ideas forum. It's an online ability to be able to get involved and provide feedback. And that group in this next phase, I think is going to be particularly important, where a lot of them have got interest in seeing the supporting evidence, understanding the methodology that we're using, and really, like I say, getting quite involved in various aspects of the project and being able to provide suggestions about those things. And so that interest tends to be greater than the public at large. And so that Ideas Forum is open to anyone to join at any time. And to get involved as much or as little as people want to. And so I encourage you, if you do come across people who have a particular interest, then you can sign up. We've got a web page for Community Connections on Have Your Say. And so you can become a member at any time. You can join up to the mailing list at any time so that people can keep you updated about those things as we go through. Obviously, the community board plays a really important role, and the community board last triennium, as Jared's already noted, played a really, really critical role of being able to hear and synthesise a lot of the community points of view and be able to translate and be able to communicate that to council. And so that conduit between the council and community is going to be really important. And we would as a project team like to be coming and working with you. It'll probably be almost every month you're going to be stuck listening to me and me asking you questions, because the project is going to move at that kind of pace. And we've spoken at the community reference group about having some members of the community reference group be able to come and speak directly with you as well, so that you're hearing from that group and they're hearing from you about what everybody's hearing, to make sure that we're getting well-rounded community views. And so that's certainly from the community reference group how they would like to be interacting with you as well. So I'd ask you to just think, and we'll just pause at the end, about how as a community board you might want to be involved to make sure that you get the information you need, and I'm not overloading you, in trying to get that balance right, and that you're getting involved at the right time, which means early enough to be able to inform the upcoming work as well, rather than just receiving reports at the end, which isn't so helpful to be able to help shape the project.
Hetty, before you go on, can I just ask a question? Just on community input, are you using any particular social or media tools, like listening tools, outside of this framework, to get general sentiment and comments across, for example, closed Facebook groups and the like? Because I think we've probably all sort of seen comments and actually a lot of the time really constructive and valuable feedback, which I think people have probably even tagged Waipa District Council into. And it'd just be interesting to hear from you how that feedback's captured, particularly because, yeah, I don't want to get too much into this, but because the comment section's closed off on the main Facebook page, by way of example.
Yes, so at the moment we informally track and just keep an eye on what the general sentiment is, and that's just in a qualitative way. We are, the council has already committed to considering reopening the Facebook comments, and that's something that's being worked through at the moment. And at the moment, one of the things we're also looking at bringing in across the council, not just for this project, is a community sentiment survey, which will pick up more than Cambridge Connections, but it gives an opportunity to be asking about particular projects and sentiment as well, to be thinking about, actually taking the pulse of the community on a regular basis. I think specifically for this project, we are recording and then synthesizing all feedback that we get from any means whatsoever, and that may be an email direct to me or direct to an elected member about the project, the sort of sentiment that comes through, the questions through our call centre or anything else. So that's all collated, as well as the formal feedback that we actually seek from everybody, so that we're able to reflect that, and we are collating that to be able to report quarterly to our council, so that they can understand. One of the things that we do have in the project implementation plan are 4 measures of success. Those are performance measures for the project, speak to the trust and transparency and the communications and engagement, and then a couple about the project deliverables as well. And so being able to track how we went last time and how we're going through each of the phases of this project is something that we're reporting to, because it does speak to some of the, as you say, the community sentiment, but also what success looks like. As Pip's already commented, this project is a really important opportunity to do things differently, to be having, we've got very much an assumption that everything is transparent and open until and unless there's a reason that it ought not to be, at least for now. We have the assumption that the community will be engaged at every point along the way, and that assumption, that really clear and explicit decision making along the way as well. And I think that we're making sure that we report on that. And as Pip says, the council can ensure that the project really is delivering on the commitment from council on that basis is important. So capturing the sentiment is an important way of doing that.
With the letter that I read tonight, is that the sort of information that you need for this sort of project?
Yes, and in fact, yesterday at the strategic Planning and Policy Committee meeting, then Councillor St Pierre raised the question about whether the reference to emergency services and the issues that they have of access was sufficiently covered in the draft problem statements that we'd put up for approval. And there was a discussion about that by the committee, because it is recognised as being an issue. And so that feedback, I think, will be really useful both to see if there are any short-term measures that can be taken, which is not within the scope of Cambridge Connections sort of immediately, and then what we can build in terms of action sort of post 2027 as well. So yes, definitely. And it means that we had already in the previous phase of this project engaged with emergency services, and certainly they are identified within our communications and engagement plan as a specific stakeholder to be engaging with directly as we go into this next phase of the project.
Yeah, I just sort of, reinforcing, Katie's comments about Cambridge Connections, but also sort of what we as a council have talked about is in a really wider format. Cambridge Connections was sort of was front and center last year, but really on lots of things, the sort of the whole concept of true transparency and this group of councillors, literally day one said, our biggest issue is trust. And so therefore Cambridge Connections is really important, but a whole pile of other things we're going to say, it's not a sort of, we've got all the secrets and you'll find out some stage. It's sort of, it literally is, we're going to try to be as open and as genuinely open as can be possible. Because, we heard the public say, hey, we maybe feel a little bit in the dark, and as a group of councillors, we're saying we can't allow that, because that's we therefore completely lose the trust of the community if we try to sort of keep things in a form of sort of secretive form, and that's not the desire of Mayor Mike, Joe, who you guys know, who did an amazing job last training, and certainly all the councillors coming in are sort of have that message very loud and clear.
And Chris?
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate to Katie that, right at the moment, particularly the fire service, have a loss of confidence in council, and the fact that, in the past, there's been meetings, there's been talk, there's been agreements, and then it doesn't happen. And, what we need to do is we need to refocus on talking with emergency services and making sure that what is said is done. I mean, classic example is Price Street was agreed to what they wanted to do. When it was finished, all of a sudden, the boys are saying, well, nobody talked about bumps. And that's the sort of thing that is unacceptable. So, it's just something to go forward.
Geta.
Just carrying on where Chris is going, is there an easier way for the community to make voices heard? And I asked that the other night as well, the questions asked for the feedback be more specific to the result, because I find, and that's the feedback from the community, the questions are often asked to get the result, required result that the council want. That's the feeling out there, rather than open, honest, transparent, this is what it is and we'll listen to you, because that's why the trust has been completely lost.
It was certainly from a Cambridge Connections perspective, sort of jumping ahead to this next phase, we're just starting to design that process now. The purpose of the next process will be, what are all ideas that might address the 3 problem statements that the committee endorsed yesterday. And so we are just looking at how to make sure that we scope the questions in a way to your point, exactly to your point, that people will be able to see what do we do with that feedback, and how can they see that their ideas provided, like how much detail might we want and would be useful? For example, are we asking for short, medium and long-term ideas? Are we asking for, what are we after and what's useful and what's not useful, and making sure that we're clear to the community so that their feedback is something that we can theme up and actually take through in the most direct way, so that there's that clear line of sight between the feedback that people have got and what pops out the other end, and working hard about how we show our workings, about what we've done with each feedback, and report back to the community about what's happened to it. And I think that closing the loop is one of the things that often when there's large community projects, that's what can fall down, is that you don't actually go back and say, well, this is what happened as a result of the feedback that you provided. And thank you. It turned out that we didn't progress with that idea because actually providing the rationale for why why that wasn't the most cost effective, why that wasn't wasn't the best solution, is something that, again, we need to make sure that we are really open about what that is. And that, again, I use the phrase about sort of people seeing our workings along the way that way, so that they can understand how those decisions are made. Mm.
You mentioned 50% co-funding from NZTA and that you have to sort of do it in their process. Can you expand on that so I can understand better, please?
Yeah, of course. So I just need to take about 3 steps back and to kind of come directly to your question, if you're happy. So what happens every 3 years is that across the Waikato region, all councils put forward what their priority projects are, and that gets prioritised at a regional scale into the regional land transport plan. And the Regional Land Transport Plan, which is held by the Waikato Regional Council, there's a front end that talks about the sort of strategic context and what the big issues are in the region, and then there's these prioritised projects that then gets assessed against whatever the government's priorities of the day are. So the government of the day puts out a government policy statement on land transport, identifies what their investment priorities are for 3 years, and gives a bucket of money to NZTA to allocate. It isn't just one bucket of money. The government allocates that into usually about 8 buckets. There's one for state highway maintenance, state highway improvements, local road maintenance, local road improvements, public transport, walking and cycling, anything else that they might come up with that time. Sometimes rail, sometimes not, sometimes roads of some national significance. But that gives you the sort of broad buckets, and the government puts a certain amount of money into each of those buckets and says to NZTA as an independent function, now assess the regional land transport programs from every region up and down the country and allocate the funds that you've got to the sort of best value up and down the country. And so that's how funding basically gets allocated. You can then draw down on that funding through the 3-year cycle. If you are eligible, if you meet the criteria to, and your project is deemed to be of sufficiently high value against what the government wants to invest in that 3 years, the default is 50% funding from central government by NZTA, and obviously then it's 50% local funding as well. And so that's how most local government projects in New Zealand happen, with that 50-50 funding. Councils can go ahead obviously and fund the whole lot if they want to, but that'd be quite a lot of money. And so it really is the government's priorities of the day that tend to dictate how hard and fast local projects can go ahead. Does that answer your question about how it happens?
Stop.
So generally, there's probably going to be more. Sorry.
So just for me to understand as well, so say, for example, you get 50% for a roundabout, right? Because that's one of an initiatives by government. Is that funding seen as an income to council?
Yes.
So another question, can you borrow on that income?
No.
Is there a limit?
No, because it's not income until you're going to, you don't collect the revenue until you're able to spend it. So it's conditional on, it's conditional approval until you actually go ahead with the works, and then you're obviously then spending the funding for that work. So no, you can't borrow on that.
So if project is say 500,000, for argument's sake, this is going to sound terrible, but say for example, the staff signs it off at 500, but the real core cost was 350. NZTA gives 50% of that. Does that happen?
No, it's done on actual cost.
Okay, Pip, your next.
I was just.
Microphone.
Sorry, the collection of requests are tending to be multiples of that available. So you have to sort of basically go up the priority scale. Sort of the demand is always greater than the supply. So you have to really get a pretty good case to ensure that you get a decent crack at the funding base.
Chris, question from you.
Just going back to Gerda's question, once you've got the funding from NZTA and you build the roundabout and it's finished, is it then classed as an asset that you can borrow against the total amount? In other words, if NZTA have funded 50% of that island and it's worth, say, $1 million, is it then regarded as an asset which you can actually borrow against?
No, it's not. Because you can't realise the asset. So, it's a council asset, but you can't realise the asset, so there's nothing to borrow against.
Katie asked us for feedback on how the Cambridge Community Board could be involved going forward. So I just sort of put forward a few ideas.
Would you mind holding that till I talk a little bit? I'd love to. Yes, please. I would absolutely love to hear them. But would you mind if I just get to the end and explain sort of what that next phase will involve a bit, and then indefinitely bring that in? Thank you. Okay, I'm changing tack a bit before we talk about specifically what have we done and just so to inform where are we going next. I thought it was useful to just pause and show this diagram, which I've shown a few times before, but again, I'll provide an opportunity to ask questions if you've got them about the steps, the indicative steps to get to an additional bridge. And for me, this is important to make sure that people have got an understanding of this. Obviously, the transport plan will cover more than a bridge. It will look across the total transport system. It will look at what kind of public transport, what kind of walking and cycling, what kind of intersection upgrades, what kind of parking, what kind of other demand management will we need, etc., etc. But an additional bridge is clearly the biggest capital decision that the council is going to make as part of this project. So by December next year, the transport plan will have identified a bridge corridor. A bridge corridor is still a general area where a bridge will go. And this follows exactly the same sort of pattern for infrastructure development, including bridges up and down the country. And so that is where we will get to by December next year. The steps that are shown on the slide here show, well, what happens after that, to show how long it can take between that decision and actually having a bridge ready to go. So it takes time, and what we've put is the sort of indicative timeframes down the bottom of each of those steps to get, firstly, to have done a lot of the investigation, a lot of that sort of geotech investigation, for example, landowner consultation, understanding if there are any heritage sites in the area, understanding what what the sort of overall geometry might be, making sure that you've done that sort of initial investigation to be able to narrow down exactly within a corridor, exactly what's the best location for a bridge. Once you know that, you can get to designating the land. designating the land is something, we've put some information up on this on our Cambridge Connections website so that people understand what designation involves. But designating the land means that once that designation is in place in the district plan, anyone who has land within that designation can't undertake anything that would undermine the ability to exercise that designation. So you can still use the land as you were, but you can't do something else that would undermine that future ability. You then go through the stage of designing a bridge, acquiring the land, starting to build a bridge and operating a bridge. And so those are the sorts of steps here. The council has already committed, and it's something that we have certainly recommended as staff, is that firstly, we really are conscious of that uncertainty is really, really hard and really horrible for everybody. And the community's already been held in that place of uncertainty for a long time. And we've been really conscious of that. Even when we designed the project plan to take us to December next year, that's another year, and you still get to a bridge corridor. And so we're very, very cognizant of that fact. And so the commitment from the elected members and from staff as well is to make sure that we move as fast as we can from that point to the point of designation, which is where landowners have certainty. And that's trying to make sure that we do that as well and quickly as possible becomes important. But you'll see that that's a couple of steps, along the way. So I think again, you will hear a lot from the community about this and the uncertainty that sits in amongst that decision. And so I think I'm just making sure that you've had an opportunity to sort of understand why that is, and the fact that it's not unique to this project. That is the way that infrastructure projects happen in the country. Is something that will be really useful for you to appreciate. So just pause and take any questions if you've got them about this before we move on. Keep going.
Is there any way of speeding this program up?
Not really, is the short answer. And if I don't know if you had the opportunity to listen to Alistair Gray, who spoke at the council workshop a couple of weeks ago, and if you haven't, you can see them on the live stream. And he came to speak about the example of Peacocks Bridge, which is obviously a useful comparison, given that it's across the same river just up the road and quite recent, and the timeframes taken there are even longer than here. It takes that time. Certainly, even if you had all the money in the world, you could get your investigations done a bit faster, but it still takes time to do the consultation with landowners. If you need to acquire land, then that happens through the Public Works Act, and that obviously therefore takes time, because again, the landowners have the right of appeal. There's a proper process that you need to go through, and so you can't short circuit that step to be able to get to designation. And so you can try to make sure that you're at the shorter end of each of these phases, but each of these steps is a necessary step and can't be short-circuited. And one of the questions that, again, at the council workshop, a similar question was asked about whether council could do any preliminary work ahead of time to then be able to run faster afterwards. And Alistair answered that question and said that in theory, you could do some preliminary work, but you don't know till the end what work you're doing. So there's a heck of a lot of sunk cost, about which option you're going to choose, for example, about a bridge location. So where would you start doing any of that pre-work? And would you start doing that pre-work because you very quickly get to a stage where that you need a level of robustness about that evidence to, for a Public Works Act land acquisition, for example. So it'd be very expensive to be trying to do that early for multiple locations, and that you are better off making sure that you are ready to go once the council's made the decision about the bridge corridor, and you go in hard as fast as you can at that point, rather than trying to preload any of that work, was his advice. And again, that would be very common to the way that, in my experience at NZTA as well, that you do the work, you do enough work to justify the decision and make sure that you've got confidence, really good confidence about the decision and that the decision maker's making. And then you roll out as quickly as possible after that.
Well, I'll just ask two questions. The first one is, are there any risks that a potential change in government, because going through an election year next year, could impact any of this project or the progression of it? And then the second question is, which parts of this step process, at what point does that NZTA co-funding technically come in? And up until then, how's the project funded?
Yeah, those are both good questions. We're certainly still seeing all of the government reform coming through, and we'll see more. We haven't even had the RM reform announcements. They'll be, any day now. In general, though, no, I'm not expecting that any change of government would lead to a change and be a risk or change the sort of context for this project. The changes to the Resource Management Act are unlikely to change. In fact, they may slightly simplify the Public Works Act, but they've signalled they're unlikely to change that drastically. The planning requirements are going to be similar. The way that even if we end up with a super ministry, which includes NZTA, which is part of the Chatter, that's function will still be performed. So the way that funding is allocated in the next bit of time will continue to be the same. So I'm not seeing anything that's going to change that. In terms of when does NZTA funding come in? So we don't have NZTA funding for this stage of the project because they funded the previous round. But NZTA funding is potentially available for every stage of a project, from your planning all the way through to that design and delivery. So we will be eligible to seek funding for the next phase of planning and the investigations, and then all of the design after that. And the question to Pip's point about whether we receive any funding is completely then dependent on what are the government's investment priorities of the day and how much money is there in each bucket, and how does this project get prioritised across all of the others in that bucket up and down the country. And so that becomes important. That's why when we write our strategic case and then the business case at the end of it, that shows what the benefit is for the project, both for the district as well as more broadly, becomes really your advocacy tool and gets assessed. But certainly it means that with a 30-year plan, one of the things that we're conscious of is, and I know that others have heard me say, 30 years is obviously 10 political cycles, both of local government and of central government. And so both the language that we use and how quickly you need to make sure that we don't only speak to, say, the current government's current priorities, because those will continue to change over the 30 years. And so we need to set out those problems in a generic enough way that they can be addressed by any government. And again, the idea, I think, of having a 30-year plan is that you've prioritised what you think is the most important and what the pathway is. But the pace that you might be able to go on each of those things is then partly dictated by whether you can get funding. But over 30 years, it's likely that you'll actually move ahead. And certainly what we found is if you've got a plan, it's far more likely to be funded than if you don't have a plan and you're putting in individual requests to chase the money of the day. And so I think that still sets us up really well, even though we will have change of government priorities over that 30-year time.
You said NZTA funded the previous round. Can you just, for my benefit, explain to me what the previous round was?
So this was when Cambridge Connection sort of version 1 was undertaken. That NZTA partly funded what at that time was called a program business case, and that's work that we're effectively redoing this time round to be able to then complete the work through a similar but slightly different process. All right, why don't I rattle on through, I've just sort of got half a dozen slides of what have we been doing in this past little while. So, and particularly around some of that community feedback. So here's a photo. No, it's not. The next one is. There we go. There's a photo of our community reference group. So what we have done is gather a lot of the information that we previously had, work with our community reference group, and then have a community engagement process that ran for a month to be able to, and we've asked 3 questions of the community, which are up on the board there. This has been a really useful exercise to be able to synthesize and draw on what the community already told us before. This slide here gives you just some stats about the scale of feedback that we got and the public feedback themes, which will come as no surprise to you. So 58% of respondents identified the need for another bridge as most important, and that was followed closely behind by managing congestion and maintaining the I've got 9 slides on a page, so maintaining something, it'll be about, it's maintaining the character of the town. That probably may not be the words it says here. And so those were, all very, very closely related, as you can imagine, in the feedback that we got. And so what we've done is translate that into NZTA problem statements. So problem statements are required as the first stage of a business case. Obviously, the way you define the problem dictates what sort of solutions are going to be best to address that problem. And so it's important to make sure that those are set up well, and that we then continue to make sure that we've got the evidence that supports that, and that when we come up with the solutions, we keep testing them to see, well, will they actually address the problem that you've identified? And so that's what we'll be doing for this next phase. So we've taken that feedback, worked with the community reference group. Andrew's absolutely right. We worked up and themed that with the community board. When we then needed to turn that into this NZTA problem statements, it's quite a technical kind of thing. And so that translation is something that we've tried to show how we've taken that community feedback and woven that through into the problem statements. But they're not problems. The problem statements that we've identified, which are the 3 on this slide here, are not what you'd rattle out at the dinner party or at the barbecue about, when you're talking to the community. I mean, obviously the headlines are really important, but the language under here and phrases like accessibility are not necessarily the way that we might choose to speak with our community, but it's certainly, that's in transport planning speak, exactly what we mean. So these are the 3 problem statements that were approved by the Strategic Planning and Policy Committee yesterday, and this is what we will use as a basis for the rest of the project. And so how about I pause and just check if there's any questions about how we got here, the purpose of problem statements, and then we'll talk about what's next, which is obviously the interesting bit.
Just move on to
Right,
what's next.
happy to carry on. Okay, so this is the same slide that you saw before, but I just put it back up, and this is the last slide, you'll be pleased to know. This up here around the next step. So what we're, the next step takes us through to the beginning of April, where we will be going to the Strategic Planning and Policy Committee with a long list of ideas. And so this is just like a brainstorming session that we will be having. So we will be collecting all ideas. After April, we'll start synthesizing those and then assessing them against criteria that the elected members will have determined for us to start filtering, doing the kind of assessment on a shorter list of options, and then finally coming to a draft transport plan with all of those short, medium and long-term initiatives. Council will approve that draft plan for consultation. It will go out for formal public consultation and come back and then be put to council for approval at the end of the year. So that's the sort of overall arc for the year. So the next phase in between now and April will involve significant community engagement in February and March. We obviously won't be bothering everyone over the summer break. It also means that as staff, we get to plan and make sure that we're ready to hit the ground running. And so we'll be starting that community engagement on Tuesday, the 27th of January, the day after Auckland Anniversary Weekend. And we will have 6 weeks of community engagement, and there will be it'll be a rollicking ride because we've got a lot to cover and making sure that we really do give the community a lot of different opportunities to get involved. And we're really conscious of the fact that we've got people who want to provide one-off quick bits of feedback as they head in or out of the supermarket or, wherever they're going, through to people who are heavily invested in the project and want to really get involved and give extensive feedback. And so we want to be providing a range of ways, and that certainly means that we want to go to where the community is. And we also want to provide a range of ways that there'll be some people who want to provide feedback online. There'll be people who want to do that face to face. There'll be people who want to be using different, to write to us, etc. And so again, we'll make sure that we develop an engagement approach that caters for all of those opportunities. We're doing that work at the moment. We have a comms and engagement plan for the project as a whole. We've identified who those stakeholders and where the key parts of the community are. We will absolutely be using our community reference group, and if they are, I hope that they have a good summer holiday, because we really want them to be using the networks that they've got to be taking these ideas and bringing the ideas back into the project, and we would really like to be making sure that the Cambridge Community Board is just front and centre in this as well. So I'm conscious that you don't have a meeting in January, and that we'll be kicking off the engagement process at the end of January so that we can give that maximum amount of time. And so what I'd like to ask is that as we've developed the draft engagement approach over the next little while, that we circulate it to you that as individual members, you provide feedback if you've got it, and if you have the time and inclination to do so, but that we can then incorporate that feedback to make sure that we really are going to hit the mark, and make sure that we don't have gaps in the way that we approach that engagement process in the next phase. And that's probably the tidiest way without a meeting to be able to do that between cycles. And that we would obviously then come to your meeting in February, and I don't have the date in front of me about whereabouts in February that is, but and use that as again, see what else is on your opportunity, but again, probably seek a workshop. Again, this would be my ideal. Seek a workshop at the end of that time so that you can provide your feedback straight into that process as part of the engagement, and that we can have given you an update of what have we heard to that point and what are we planning on doing for the next little while, so that so you're involved along the way in the next phase. But and I thank you for waiting, Andrew, but I really value your suggestions about how we make the best use of what you're seeing for the community reference group, but particularly also of the community board for this next phase.
I think the CRG is quite vocal, and they'll take care of themselves, and if they've got a problem, they'll come to us. But in terms of us, I just wrote down a few things. Ideas really facilitate discussion where required. Last round, as Pip mentioned, stage one, the community board asked to step in and facilitate meetings, but the request was declined. So I'd say we're required, but also where we as a community board kind of see fit, maybe facilitate. I've got ready and waiting, so we might not be doing too much at some stages, but if the community has a demand for our attention or help, we are there and we let them know that. I've got independent observer, so we have some independence from council and the staff. And we are a respected voice when it comes to progression stages at council, which Charlotte kind of represents us and attends meetings that the council do listen to our viewpoint.
I do worry a little bit that there's only 76 members of that Ideas Forum, which well, there's lots of assumptions you could make about that. It could be apathy, or why bother, or it could be the channel. There's lots of things. It could be one really good way. I don't know. Maybe between now and 27 January, if it's going to remain there, there needs to be something to bump up that input, and potentially even I would go as far to say not calling it Ideas Forum, because it doesn't really sound substantial. I think people really just want to give input, what I've seen so far on, so what are we going to do? And I think that's the sort of language across the board. I'll just sort of say now that we need to use this real language. Just like, give me, what you need, and let's keep it like at the barbecue language kind of level. But yeah, I think what we could potentially do is have a number of our own little focus groups or meetings or walkabouts around the town to try and bump up some interest. And I have to say the election process, I think the community was really activated to engage in this year's election. Some of those tactics, just face to face, would be really good for this. And I think that we'd all be happy to engage in that and support you.
Thank you. I'd really appreciate that. And you're absolutely right. I mean, when I said we'd go to where the community is, and that means being at the market each time. It means being at the sports ground. It means being at the marae. It means being outside the school. I mean, there is that need to make sure that we're really visible for the project. I won't pull out now, but it was interesting when one of the councillors commented that 250 something bits of feedback didn't sound very many for a project that was important. It was interesting that Councillor Campson actually came back and had some figures which I'll circulate later because they won't be able to take me too long to find them on my phone. To say, well, I guess his point was that he wasn't surprised at this point when there isn't something tangible for people to get into, that there was only that level of feedback. And even then, when he did the numbers to look at how many people had been involved in other major infrastructure projects around the country, there were a number of them where, as a proportion of our population, actually we've done very well already getting this sort of scale of feedback. But I in response to the question that was asked at the council meeting yesterday, I mean, I strongly expect we will get significantly more feedback when it, as you say, when it becomes real and you say, what do you want us to do about it? Then that's something that everybody's got a view about. And already we've had in the previous round, we asked the 3 questions. The third question was quite solution oriented. And so we've already picked up some of those things. Last time, when the work was done, we had over 500 pieces of feedback about what people thought we could do about it. And we'll obviously be drawing that through because those ideas remain absolutely valid. So we're certainly not starting from scratch, but it gives us sort of scale of just how much we expect to hear from the community. And I think that we need to make sure that we've set it up so we have the opportunity to hear from all groups within the community, and don't leave anybody any voices silent in this next phase. So yeah, would value that.
And just one other thing, we sort of mentioned the importance of ensuring that any short-term issues or quick wins or operational things are captured and actioned at the same time is equally important, because there are going to be lots of things that people want to discuss or talk about throughout this process, and we need to ensure that line is quite clear around how we deal with that at the same time. Yeah, so I just want to
agree. No, I agree. Yeah. And you obviously weren't able to be at the committee meeting yesterday, but your statement was read out, and you could see the body language in the room, that there was certainly a broad agreement across the elected members. I'm looking at Pip as one of those, obviously, to recognise that those quick wins are important, and it's that it doesn't matter for the community. It doesn't matter whether it's within the scope of Cambridge community of Cambridge Connections or just of council work. We just need to receive it, listen to it, and respond to it in the most appropriate way. Yeah.
Chris.
Katie, I would make one suggestion, is that with the engagement with the residents, is that if the council could also use the local Cambridge News. There's a lot of people, particularly my age, that don't use social media, not Facebook or anything. And what they read in the newspaper, it's amazing how many people read that newspaper. And so, then afterwards, when it's over, people can't say, well, we didn't get consulted. They've had all those different avenues, including the newspaper.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point, and it's certainly a form that we will be using. And so we've already been speaking to the paper about whether they are interested in running a campaign through this through that engagement phase to make sure. I mean, they'll publish what they choose to publish, but again, just raising visibility of the project and reminding people that there are opportunities to engage. We've also we'll be meeting with them shortly to discuss the sort of range of ways that they may choose to do that, and we may choose to pay for feature stories or adverts. And again, making sure that there's that visibility through the paper, so that people know how they can provide feedback and get involved. So yeah, thank you.
So just for clarification, when we are, getting the "what are you going to do about it" feedback, um, will we be best to carry an electronic form with us or something in hard copy to note that down at the time? I really want to make sure that that we are capturing that feedback. There's no doubt about it. Yeah.
So certainly, yes, we can absolutely provide that. We certainly found that we provided hard copy forms at our libraries and call centres in the previous round. And so there was that opportunity. And I think for you, if you're happy to do that, yes, I think that there'll always be, to say, look, if you want to jump on the website, if you want to jump on here, go away and do it. If you don't want to do that, take this form right now, or let me just scribble down your main points and I'll feed them back. Whatever way that comes in is all good. Like you say, we don't want to lose people's voice because we didn't provide them a really wide range of ways that they could actually tell us what's important to them.
And just to go back to, sorry, I'm asking lots of questions, but just to go back to the initial comment about closed Facebook groups and social listening. How do we, if we observe something that is noted and for whatever reason a person may not typically want to engage in a local government consultation process, how can we best document that feedback and make sure that it's part of the wider "what are you going to do about it" collection?
I don't think I've got the best answer off the top of my head about that, but I think that's a question I should take away and ask the comms and engagement team about how we currently monitor those sites and whether they are able to pull through those comments automatically or whether there is a different way that we should be doing that. So let me take that away as a question. Yeah, thanks.
Any other questions? This has been a really, really valuable workshop for me personally, so thank you.
All right, lovely. So look, thank you. I mean, if you do have questions at any time or there are members of the public who want to know more about the project or have something to say, please do direct them to me in the first instance. And if I'm not the best person to answer them, then I'll obviously pass them on to someone else. But I really do want to make sure that people have got the opportunity to speak up for things that are important. So in terms of next steps, what I will do is circulate a draft engagement plan. I'm not going to promise exactly when that's going to be because the staff need a Christmas break, but it will come almost certainly pretty early in January, and we will then need to ask for a reasonably tight sort of turnaround time so that we can make sure that we've planned it properly so that we're really ready to hit the ground running at the end of January. But any other questions, please just let me know. But thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you. Okay, I think we'll end it there. Thanks to those of you who are still online, and we still have a member of our community in our forum, which is great. So yes, we'll leave it at that and log off for tonight.